if you ask a lot of the older fans in the Trailer Park Boys community, they'll tell you that season 8 is where everything starts going downhill. I am going to reserve my opinion until the end. For now, we will say that the central plot of season 8 is essentially that Barb finds out she has to sell the park due to financial reasons, and the plot kicks off pretty quickly from there with Julian and the other boys trying to make a plan to get the money to buy the park back so that Barb, and by extension they, remain in control. I actually like the fact that this season has a central premise and there's a goal in mind. It gives a lot more chance for the series to have a story and a plot, and I think that after embracing so heavily the like real life documentary aspects of the show for so many seasons, it did maybe need to be start going and heading in a direction and really start having, you know, a plot and a plan. Maybe that's not to the interests of some people, but I think that it's hard to just come up with everyday scenarios and not kind of lean into the fact that you're a show after so long. It allows the series to be more cohesive and there's a lot less filler, so there's a lot more chance for actual character developments and for the story to go other places and for us to see the potential in order for the series to continue. As usual, we are going to start with our boy, Julian. So, Trinity, Ricky's daughter, gets pregnant by Jacob this season. Everybody knows that Ricky's going to freak out about it, so Trinity actually goes to Julian first. We're not going to talk about the other implications of that because I said that I wouldn't. But I choose to interpret it as Julian is kind of the only one who really knows how to handle Ricky, and so Trinity wants him to arrange things so that she can bring the news, right? Also, everybody knows that Ricky hates Jacob, and the fact that he's now impregnated his daughter isn't exactly going to warm him to him any further. It's another one of those moments that humanizes Julian, especially for me, because it's like, oh, Julian's the only one who can tame the savage beast that is Ricky LaFleur. I actually really I like Julian this season. I don't know whether this was the season that Julian really stopped getting treated as the park hero and we really started to see the karma come back on him from the earlier seasons. It's like he went through his Saturn return or something, girl. And it's interesting that I said that because Julian himself has an interest in the esoteric and crystals and shit like that this season, because it's kind of rumored that Julian is involved with Barb this season, but he says he's just working with her in order to get the part back. But you know, it's Julian, you never know. Barb certainly would go there if previous seasons are anything to go by. It's an interesting side of Julian's personality, like being interested in spiritual stuff and believing in crystals and things like that. And I think in this season, it's kind of left up in the air whether he's just doing it to humour Barb or not. But I think that we can see in other pieces of Trailer Park Boys media, especially, I'm thinking like Out of the Park, there are definitely times where we can see that Julian does buy into this kind of thing and does actually genuinely believe it. And I think that it's something about his personality that like everybody doesn't view as like manly, and seeing as he's this very stoic, very traditionally masculine character, it's this nice dichotomy of his character that I really enjoy. There's another bit that really endears Julian to me in this season, which is when and Ricky get really, really stoned together, and it's something that we've never seen from Julian before, and he's just like melted and giggling in a lawn chair, and it's really heartwarming to see. You know, you kind of understand why these guys are friends when you don't see just Julian bossing them around all the time, and you see that he can be fun and a cool guy to chill with. So I don't know, this season it's kind of like, I mean, I like Julian, I like him as a character, but I never understood the pedestal that he was up on, and I think that the more he gets humanized to me in these ways, the more that I just like him, because he seems like an actual knowable person instead of this bravado that he's putting forward all the time. Do you know what I mean? Another iconic moment with Julian this season is when I can't for the life of me remember what they're arguing over now, but he wants Bubbles to come and see something, and Bubbles is mad at him, and he gets in front of Bubbles' cars, and they stand there until it's dark, I'm pretty sure, because both of them are stubborn as hell. And it's really funny to see like the similarities between the characters, because you do think of Bubbles and Julian as so different. Bubbles is standing there honking his horn saying, I can't turn on my honker, Julian. And then Julian uses reverse psychology to get Bubbles to believe that he has won the argument so that he will do what Julian wants. It's classic Julian, but it's used in a way that is humorous and doesn't make me think he's a dick. So it's good. The spirit of the show, I feel, is still very intact this season so far, and I hope you agree with me. Maybe tropes are being utilized in different ways than we've seen before, but the characters are essentially still the same. A big part of my hypothesis as to why people don't necessarily like season 8 is because the direction they chose to take it in was taking a lot of the characters to their lowest points. Example, Barb has no money and has to sell the park, and she has to come and live in the park instead of living out of it and being this other and being of like a higher status than the rest of the characters as far as the hierarchy as the show goes. Then there's Ricky. I almost want to do a round of applause just for introducing him, but I won't. This is the season where Ricky pays for everything with hash coins, which I just think is amazing. The guy is so far removed from not reality. I don't want to say he's so far removed from reality. What do I mean? He's so far removed from like the norms of our culture. Man is so enlightened that he has created his own currency. Ricky no longer lives under capitalism. He's broken the system. And that's just so fucking admirable. Ricky's relationship with Lucy is not great this season. In fact, she's left him for George, and she lives in a fucking house, which has got to feel some type of way for Ricky. I can't even imagine. And one of my favourite scenes, weirdly, is when he sees her for the first time in ages. I think he goes dropping Trin off or picking Trin up, and he sees her in the doorway of George's actual fucking house, not a trailer. And he's here in the same fucking beat up car with one door missing that he has had for the entirety of the season, and runs like shit. And he's wearing the same pants and the same shirt that he always wears. And he's Ricky, you know? And the look that he gives her, man, tell me why we got to pack so much heavy romance into such a silly little show. I don't know. Maybe I'm a freak for thinking all of this is romantic. So Ricky finds out that Trin is having a baby, and he does have a little freak out about it, but he comes around to the idea and he starts to steal stuff for the baby, because obviously you can't afford to buy stuff, right? And they go stealing stuff out of cars anyway, and so he starts stealing baby stuff to give to Trin. Lucy knows that he has obviously stolen this stuff, but she, like I've said before, she doesn't mind stuff like that. She's not too high and mighty to refuse stolen gifts, okay? And so when George, who's obviously a cop, comes home and sees the stuff and he suspects that it's stolen also, Lucy and Trin back Ricky up, and it's the start of this kind of flirtationship with Lucy where it's like, oh my god, are they going to get back together? Is he going to steal her back from George? Is this going to be the most romantic thing that's ever happened in the show? Let's find out. It all eventually comes to a head when there's an outbreak of crabs in the trailer park, right? And we'll get to that and the where's and whys and hows of that later. But essentially, Lucy finds out and she comes to get Trin, who's staying with her dad at the minute, and says that she doesn't want Trinity to be around Ricky if he's going to have crabs. And Ricky says, obviously, like, he didn't sleep with anyone because the only person he wants to sleep with is Lucy. And he shows her his pubes to prove that he doesn't have crabs. And she ends up turning up back at his trailer later, and they start a relationship with the Benedicts. And I just love this entire arc. I love Ricky and Lucy. I think that they should be endgame. There's something so simplistic about the way that Ricky loves Lucy that I will never get over, I don't think. It's just a part of my personality. At the end of the day, loving your family and having a big dick is the biggest win. And Ricky proves that every day. I didn't just make up that Ricky has a big dick, by the way. That's canonically in this season. I've written it down. A really great open for Ricky is when he's frozen because of the huge shop air conditioner that he stole and put on the side of his trailer to cool down the weed. And the only way that he's survived is because he fell asleep with a joint in his mouth, I guess, and is breathing through the joint. Ricky has a little bit of a crisis during this season where he thinks that he's not going to be a good granddad. It's kind of a rehash of the shit apple arc that he had with Trinity. And it shows that, I don't know, it's just another one of those storylines that shows that Ricky really is the fucking heart of the show, my guy. He's got such a big heart and he loves his family so much. And I think the only thing I want is for him to have a normal life. And that will never happen because he doesn't want a normal life. So, grand. Iconic moments from Ricky are obviously, I think my brain is short circulating anything involving Orangey. Orangey the goldfish becomes an iconic character, and we didn't have him before this. I'm pretty sure this is the first time Orangey comes up, so anybody who didn't want season 8 to be a thing would never have experienced the hilarity that was the relationship between Ricky and Orangey, his fish, and friends with the Benedicts, but we've already been through that. Speaking of everybody being at their lowest, my god, Bubbles has gained some confidence, I guess, after losing his mind last season, and once again tries to break free of the hold of his toxic friends by creating the Shed and Breakfast. It's a really, really nice idea. It's like a holiday place where people can bring their cats, and he has pancakes that he's going to make them for breakfast. And then within probably like the first 24 hours, Julian ends up turning it into a whorehouse. And I, once again, just feel so sorry for Bubbles. A moment of silence for my guy Bubbles. People think that Bubbles becomes whiny after this. They feel like he gets flanderized a little bit and that part of his character really gets exaggerated. But I think it's just the natural progression of the character. We've seen Bubbles get to this place before with his friends, and I think that after all the craziness of the last 8 seasons, he's just fucking fed up, dude. He just wants to be done with it, and he's sick of taking their shit, and he's actually gained a lot of confidence. So I think the fact that he stands up to the boys, even if it comes across as whiny, is just the natural progression of the character. And I always liked Bossy Bubbles. I always liked it when he lost his shit with them and he ended up bossing them about, because the boys do actually listen to Bubbles because they love him a lot and they want him to be okay and not worried and safe. I always thought it was funny when he lost his temper, and so for him to be more like that more of the time, I don't feel like is a loss. Iconic moments for Bubbles this season are when something happens, I don't know, the boys piss him off in some kind of fucking way and they try and get his belly and he says, "Get your fucking hands off my belly." Boys don't have the right to touch his belly when you piss him off, okay? The fact that Julian left Bubbles in charge of decorating his new bar, right, and in charge of naming it, and basically just put all the heavy lifting on Bubbles while Julian went and flirted about doing the easy stuff, which is, you know, very Julian of him. I don't know, was it a subtle dig or what? Was it his frustration coming out, the fact that Bubbles named the bar the Dirty Dancer, or did he genuinely think it was a good idea? I would love to know someone else's thoughts and opinions on that, because I truly can never decide. It was a good idea though. It was a good idea. The bit where so Ricky kills his fucking goldfish so many times that Bubbles has to keep a secret supply of goldfish in order to keep replacing it, because Ricky would be very, very upset if he found out that his fish was dead. Ricky is trying to make an ice hockey rink in his trailer and freezes his fish in there by accident, and so Bubbles has to dig it out, and he just fucking chucks this dead fish into a crowd of people, and I think that's really funny. And the line, I'm never going to be able to find a clip of this, I don't think, but when they're making the honey oil, they send Jacob and Corey to steal pipes from a building site, and they come back with the wrong type of pipe. It's the wrong size. Bubbles says, "I said 3 inches. You would have known that if you'd have put your cocks together." I think Jim is the one who gets it the worst this season. He's not a cop anymore. He gave up on that dream last season, and he's even losing his job as trailer park supervisor because he's too old now. He's feeling a little bit worthless. He's feeling like he doesn't have a purpose in life, and that's kind of the driving point of his character at this point. And to top it all off, man can't get a boner. All of this causes a lot of tension between him and Randy, and he makes a genuine effort not to lose him this season, but his apathy makes it so that he does. Also, the fact that Randy's kind of being a dick this season, but we'll talk about that in a minute. He's feeling like a tertiary character in this series up until the point where we find out he has a stake of 1% in the park, and this 1% makes him relevant again, and he uses it to the best of his ability to cause as much trouble as he can and make himself, again, as relevant as possible. And I think there's a lot of Julian in Mr. Lahey this season, right? Because there's a question of whether the patheticism that he was displaying is like an act, or whether he genuinely felt that way until halfway through, just causing shit with his 1% and realizing that he could use it to get bigger stakes in the park if he played his hand right, or if that was his plan from the beginning. It takes him over the course of the series from like the lowest point of his life to basically owning half the park and having his feet propped up on Julian's back while he sips his wine for the majority of the narrative, okay? I love the fact that he shows his hand like this at the end, and he has this big monologue about shit fish and shit nets and whatnot, even though I think it goes on for way too long and isn't particularly funny. It's a big grand moment for him, and I feel like people should enjoy that, and they just don't. I don't know. I really like the fact that it's been building up for a while now that Jim is developing these feelings for Julian, and Randy leaves him this season In fact, Randy leaves him every season, I'm pretty sure, but this season Randy leaves him, and so he's got every excuse to get this kiss off Julian at the end in order to seal the deal, swapping over the bits and pieces and the percents of the park, right? And he chooses not to do it because his love for Randy is so true, my guy. And we're just back to the romance of Trailer Park Boys again. You can never convince me that this isn't a rom-com. Let's talk about Randy. He's a younger guy than Jim, right? He's annoyed by the apathy that Jim is experiencing this season. He doesn't want to just like give up the fight the way that Jim seems to have, especially because Rick pissed in his shoes and Jim didn't do anything about it. He feels like Jim isn't sticking up for him anymore. And we know that Randy's like a proud guy. He's got this thing about recognition, I guess. And so the fact that Lahey isn't recognizing that he's upset and wants something done, when Lahey still has the power to do something about it, he doesn't like it, so he leaves him. Also, he feels unattractive because he wants a boner made from love and Mr. Lahey can't make one. So by that logic, Mr. Lahey doesn't love him, right? So he cheats. He cheats on him with Donna, who nobody likes, and who I won't probably be mentioning again. He acts like a dick when he comes home. He acts like a dick when he's guilty. He's got this reverse psychology thing going on, which is very reminiscent of Ricky and like the way that he reacted to like Corey and Trevor being gone. Randy, even though he's done something wrong, treats Mr. Lahey like shit until he admits that he cheated. And this kind of explains his behaviour in season 7 when he cheated on Lahey and Barb with Lucy, and he was acting like a sweaty, greasy, horrible person for the beginning of the narrative and most of the season. I do think Randy did get flanderized a little bit at the start of this like princess behaviour from him, because he breaks up with Jim over breakfast, over like him cooking the wrong breakfast or something similar. And yeah, it's just the start of a downward spiral for Randy from here, but I still really love him. I feel like he does come back a little bit, but we're just nowhere near there yet, so don't even remember that I even said that, okay? An iconic moment for Randy, though, is of course when he's pole dancing on the roof of the Dirty Dancer and he falls through the roof and J-Rock's like, "It's raining motherfuckers."
Come on, get it up! What the hell happened? Is everybody okay?
It's raining motherfuckers.
I'm gonna talk a little bit more about Barb this season because she's also really at a low point. Like, obviously, her relationship with Randy and Jim didn't work out, and then she got with Sam, and now they've broken up. She's had a terrible track record with men, including that time she was dating Ricky. She really does become more of a sympathetic character in this season for me. I feel like people really, really don't like what got done with Barb's character after this season. But for me, this season was like essential in setting up that arc. This is the start of like her downward thing, because she, like I said, she was like a step above everybody at the trailer park because she owns the trailer park and she probably lives out in a house somewhere. But now she's gonna lose the trailer park and she has to live there. So now she's all enmeshed with the life at the trailer park. She's almost like come down a step in society, right? Broken up with a boyfriend, and she's turned to spiritual stuff like crystals and things like that because she feels like that's all she can do, right? She has to turn to like magic in order to solve her problems because she feels like there's nothing else. There's like a little shred of hope for her at the end when she meets a cop who likes crystals as well, but he doesn't come back in the next season, so I'm assuming that that also goes to shit. We see Barb get pushed to her very limits from here on out, and I think that in the future will explain some of the places her character goes, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Some notes for the season. We come back to a classic for the big climax of the show, right? Which is George, Cyrus, and Sam all kind of converge on the park at once. So it's all these outside threats that we've seen before, but they're combined together, so it feels bigger. I love the fact that Corey and Jacob don't like each other at first, and then as the season goes on, they really do just become besties, and then they've got a secret handshake in jail at the end. There's some really fucking great background characters in this season, and I feel like that's a big factor of the show as it goes on. This is when it went over to Netflix, right? So they got more of a budget, they had more room for like extras and stuff like that. It wasn't as close-knit of a production team, right? So obviously that takes away from some of the cozy feel of the Trailer Park Boys, and it does maybe start to feel a bit more corporate for some people, but it also makes room for so many great characters to come along. Maybe not so much in this season, we don't see people who will become recurring characters, but there's people like the mortician who hits Ricky with the hairdryer. That's hilarious. As we go down the line, there'll be people like Marguerite, who I think is a really iconic character, and she comes back and back again. She's like the trailer park starts to feel a lot bigger and a lot more real as a result of this, right? So I can see both sides, but I like it personally. I like this season, I can't lie. Iconic moments are when J-Rock gets called out for being a jump rope champion and then makes sad DJ noises as he is arrested. Everybody talking with their mouths clenched because they know that the cops are watching and they don't want them to read their lips. Corey and Jacob dressed up as Ricky and Julian is probably just one of the funniest visual gags ever. And I don't know, there's something that just uniquely tickles me about it. It's like dressing up your dogs somehow. And of course, the iconic moment when Sebastian Bach comes back and is it Cyrus? Is it Cyrus who points the gun at and he's like, you don't even know that nobody even likes bullies.
Guys, you don't even know that nobody even likes bullies like you! Dance, motherfucker!
My favourite episode from this season is episode 7, which is when the guys are forced to take part in a community service puppet show because they got Bubbles in trouble and Bubbles had to go and give a talk and he didn't want to do it on his own. Ricky throws piss over an audience of children and then smokes weed that he claims is French tobacco in front of them all. The fact that Ricky is so incapable of feeling embarrassed because he has no social awareness versus the fact that Bubbles is so highly strung and cares so much about what people think of him. It makes for a really, really funny scene, and it's even funnier when Bubbles dresses up as the Green Bastard to get his revenge because it's this thing about personas with Bubbles, isn't it? It's like he doesn't feel like he can confront Ricky as himself, so he has to dress up as the Green Bastard, and the Green Bastard comes and gets revenge for Bubbles because Green Bastard's the brave one, right? But he accidentally like almost kills Ricky, I guess, and it's just really wholesome and silly, and Bubbles is really sorry at the end, and then also the bit where Bubbles says, "Fuck you, Don, you weird spiritual bastard." I think I'm finished. Did I even say anything? I feel like I've just been rambling for a straight half an hour, but I actually had a lot of fun. So thanks to anyone who's listening, and I'll see you for season 9. Oh my god, we're halfway. We are. Oh god, we're doing it. We're doing it, guys. We're doing it.